So today we have Ardis Herrold and Tim Spuck who will tell us all about how to get good media coverage for your activities. Take it away, guys.
Okay, so my name's Tim Spuck, and I've been part of the Spitzer Space Telescope research team back when it was the Spitzer project, and now it's the NITARP project, and have served a number of tours of duties with them. And I teach in rural northwestern Pennsylvania, so a smaller community. Oil City has a population of about 10,000 people, and it is one of the more economically depressed areas within the state. And so, Ardis, if you want to do a quick introduction.
Sure. I'm Ardis Herrold. I also was in the Spitzer program. I don't know if it was the same year as you, Tim, but so I have done that and a number of other programs that I know Tim from. And I teach in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is a suburb in the east part of Detroit. It used to be a very affluent community, and it still is, except that we've gone from being very homogeneous and upper middle class to about 25% free and reduced lunch, and our population demographics are changing a lot. I generally teach ninth grade earth science and then an astronomy class in the high school.
Okay, and I'll just add a couple things just as comparison. So, Ardis, you said your free and reduced lunch rate is what, about 25%?
Right.
Okay, so Oil City is at 57% free and reduced lunch. So, kind of gives you a sense. And I teach high school earth science and astronomy, both of those. So, Lucy, do we want to advance to the next slide?
It's on.
So it's one of the phrases I like to use when I'm talking to people about media and teaching and what your role as a teacher is as far as getting the word out about what you're doing. And there's a common phrase out there: if a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? And let's just rephrase that a bit. If you're doing some great things in your classroom and students are doing some great things and there's nobody there to hear about it, does it make an impact? And that's where media comes in. And it's your, I hate to add one more responsibility onto teachers, but it is our responsibility as educators, because we're in the classroom, we're working with our students, we know what we're doing. It is our responsibility to get the word out, because the impact that you can have on your community is an impact that then resonates with your students. It's an impact that it creates an atmosphere of community, of whatever it is that you're doing. If you're doing great things and those great things are getting out into the community and being heard, then it creates a sense of pride within your community, a sense of pride within your school. And as we all know, that type of an atmosphere significantly enhances the quality of learning that takes place. And that's what we're all after. So, don't hold back. I think that, getting the media attention is part of your role as a teacher. And I can honestly say it's not a role that, especially when I first started out with this, it was always a role that I can't say I really enjoyed. For most of you, this might come as a shock, but I used to be really, really shy and backwards. And, I still am sort of to a degree. And it took a little bit of work to kind of get me to the point of saying, no, it's my role to get what my students are doing out into the public. And if that means that my picture or my classes or my students get in the paper at least once a month, and other teachers or other people kind of take that as you're just trying to be a media hog or get attention, so be it. I just look at it as my role as an educator to do that. So, Ardis?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, it's one thing to say that the community hears all the bad things that happen, and certainly I don't know if it's ever been more true than now. But, I've even found within the whole school, people don't know what each other are doing. the principal doesn't know what you're doing. Other teachers in your department might not even know what you're doing. And so you can't just assume, like Tim said, that if you're doing good things, it's somehow going to trickle out and people are going to find out about it. And as Tim mentioned, I also tend to be more of the retiring type, and I felt very uncomfortable with this at first too, but one day it occurred to me that it's really for my students, and I'll do anything for my students. And to get them the credit that they deserve is very, very important to them. I don't have anything else on that unless you want to follow up. And if not, Louisa, you can go to the next slide.
Okay. It's there.
Okay, so one of the things I learned, I don't know what the size of our district is, but we have 2 high schools that are about 1,500 students each, and then 9 elementaries and 3 middle schools. And I learned that in earlier days, I thought that if I just submitted a piece of information like, hey, we're doing these great things, and I went through the chain of command, that of course it would get to the right people and things would get publicized, or someone would come back and follow up. And the reality is every district is totally unique based on who's employed in various positions and how large your district is and how much they really care about what's going on in the classroom. So one of the things I had to do is figure out what our pipeline was. What's the chain of command? You don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers by jumping over them, but on the other hand, you can't assume that they're going to advocate for you and your students. So you have to know who to talk to, and if you don't hear back from them, you need to know who to pick up the phone and call. And so that's what I meant by the media pipeline. I know in our district, for instance, we're supposed to send things directly to our assistant secretary for the superintendent. And she does an okay job, but it's not always 100% fail-safe. Tim, you have anything to add on that?
I think that just a couple things I want to kind of reinforce something that Ardis said is you need to explore your media pipeline. Some school districts have people that you are to work through in order to get the media out there. When I first started at Oil City, that certainly was not the case. And so I kind of established my own media contact and would go ahead and send things directly to them. But if you do have somebody that's their designated role, you do need to talk to them and explain what you're wanting to do. And it does not hurt to just offer to them, just say, I'm sure you've got a lot going on. Would you mind if I go ahead and I send something out to the media outlets, as long as I CC you on the email that goes out, or as long as I keep you in the loop? And they may say, hey, that's fantastic. No, go right ahead and do that. Or they may say, no, it has to come through my office. And that really depends on your institution.
Okay,
So,
ready for the next slide?
yeah.
Okay, there it is.
So getting to know your local media and reporters and other contacts, there's, I think probably, Ardis, do you mind if we jump to the next slide? Because I think it, there we go. Okay. So, when you think about it, you're getting to know your media sources. What are they in your area? You have your local newspapers. You have your school newspaper. You might have local radio stations. You have TV, especially if you're a larger community. You might have some larger TV networks that operate there. And if you don't, generally speaking, most small communities, even Oil City, has a local cable channel. So this is a channel that's broadcast that usually focuses on local media types of events. And so sometimes they'll have their own sort of local talk show programs or things like that. But the best thing to do is to call your local cable office and ask them about is there a local cable channel? Because I know that we've done that before in Oil City and have been on different programs through our local channel. But you definitely want to make a list of the contacts at each of these media outlets. And the best way to do that is to call look up in the yellow pages and call the radio station, call the newspaper, and just say, who is the person there that handles your science or your education types of stories? And they will generally give you that person's name, or you can go on the website and get their email address. But you want to create a database of who these people are, what's their phone number, what's their email address, what's their fax number, and keep that very handy. So, Ardis, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Louisa, can we back up one just for a second?
Sure. It should be there.
Yep. So in the past couple of years, I've discovered this new phenomena called web media. And there are many, many probably sources like this, but I know at least in my community, there's this thing called the patch. Are the rest of you familiar with that maybe? Have you heard of it?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
I am.
It's kind of like an organic web media thing. Current events, what's going on in your area. But it started out that way, but then it started to branch into, hey, look what's going on in this school or this agency. So it started actually developing these little news stories. And you know how much we have our attention now directed toward computing media, especially. And the other thing is our web pages, our district web page, and also our school web page. I try to get, if we're going to do an event, like we've got an event coming up in 2 days, and I try to get those on the calendar of events because sometimes people will see that when they log into the main district web page of the school, and they'll click on it to find out what's going on. And also we have like scrolling banners on our web pages that have little snippets of stories, like one-line feeds of stories and maybe some pictures of students who have won something or students who have gone on a certain trip. And so I try to feed photos and just very small pieces of information both to our district web person and our school web person to get them on the web pages, and that helps also publicize what's going on. Something I didn't think about at the time when I was putting my slides together is that another way I've been able to get the word out somewhat effectively is I have a blog that a lot of the parents follow when I'm teaching. And I can post something in my blog, and they can kind of get word out that way, too, of different things that are going on. And so I guess I would just say, let's not forget about social media. Let's not forget about web media, too, when we want to get PR, because sometimes that's the most effective thing. I know some schools have issues with, there's different school policies about Facebook. Some schools say use it as you want. Some schools say you can't be friends with students. Some schools say Facebook groups are okay, but nothing else. But, that's another, or Twitter. Those are other ways that we can get a little interest in our classroom.
Okay, good point, sir.
Okay, should I go to the next slide or two forward?
Sure.
2 forward, okay? Go ahead.
Ardis, I'm going to go ahead and go.
Okay. So this kind of speaks for itself, but very often parents are much better advocates than teachers or school officials as far as getting the word out. I've had, the situation, and maybe some of you have too, where you send a press release out or, you contact all your local people and you think something really cool is going on and you just get no bites at all. But then you get some parent that's just totally excited about what, his or her son or daughter did, and they go shake up the media. And sometimes they can move media into coming to talk to you or following a story when the teacher or the school can't. I think part of the problem is saturation. Is local media get so many news items from schools that they get kind of bombarded and, in a sense, complacent. But the person who's persistent and really enthusiastic and personal very often can get their attention. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's covered well. I think that it is important that you have to be, and to talk about here, I think maybe in the next couple of slides, is you do have to be persistent. You need to follow up. They get every single newspaper, radio, you name it. They probably get, my guess is, 100 communications, if not more, a day on news stories or different events. And a lot of them are faxes, a lot of them are emails. And so you have to understand, that they're trying to wade through an awful lot. The other thing to keep in mind about every single media source, newspaper, TV, radio, they have all cut staff in the last, 3 to 4 years. And they have fewer people that need to produce the same amount of work. And so the more you can do for them, the more you can kind of get through all of the clutter and the static that's there in the background, the better your relationship is going to be with them.
It sounds like I should go to the next slide. There you go.
Okay, so write your own press release. You want to, put in as much detail as possible. You want to include high-resolution photos. I always try to send the photo along with my press release so that they have it, or I will at least, in Microsoft Word, embed the picture that I want to use as well as the caption in the press release, and then go ahead and offer to send them a high-resolution photo if necessary. Here are 2 websites right here that you can go to. The first one has several different templates that you can use for press releases. The second one is a pretty good guide on how do you go ahead and construct your own press release. You want your press release to look like a press release and, have the information that a typical press release would have, because that's what your media outlet, that's what your news media outlet is used to using. And so that's something to keep in mind. And like I said, those are 2 excellent tools for you.
Add something to what Tim said about this. I don't know if any of you run into this in your district, but we have kind of an odd policy about photos. We're not allowed to post the photos or last names of children on our website, even if the child is in 12th grade or has graduated. However, if the newspaper comes and takes their picture and puts it on the front page with their name, there's no problem. But in our district, we have to have a photo release signed, and sometimes that's really created an obstacle because of the red tape involved getting the district photo release form from said the sources and getting it back to them and getting it approved. So what I found sometimes a workaround for that is just to say, hey, I've got photos if you want to come look at them, or if you want to take your own photo. And that kind of gets around our photo issue of our district. And a lot of times I've found that, the newspapers are very happy to come take their own photos. But as Tim mentioned earlier, that the key part about this is that reporters are very busy, and the more work you can do for them, the more likely they are to feature your story or your news item. So in the beginning, when I was doing press releases, I was providing just kind of minimal information, thinking, hey, if this sounds interesting, they'll get back to me. But I found out that the more I could write the story for them, the more likely it was that they'd follow through with something.
Yeah. And, that is a good point. And something that you can do as far as getting press releases is you can search online. You can go ahead and find a typical press release form or a photo release form from that students can sign. and just change a few things and print it out. And have your students that are going to be involved with these projects, just have them sign as soon as they get involved. Just say, send a note home to your parents, to the parents, and just say, you know, going to be involved with this. We're going to be taking some pictures. Some of them might be used in press releases. Can we get your permission to use photos of your children in these, you know, engaging in these activities for this research project or whatever? And you can, you know, that generally helps, because then you can, if you need to, you can stage certain photos with kids that you do have press release forms for, or photo release forms for.
That's a good point that Tim makes, because it may involve a lot of time. Like, for instance, in our district, we have to use the district form, and it has to go to the superintendent's office and get approved before a photo can be published, because they have a district list of parents who have said, no, I don't want my kid anywhere to be seen. So it's kind of an arduous process, and even though you can talk directly to the parents, in our district at least, we still have to get approval the long way. So that's a great idea about, you know, thinking ahead and planning the time you need to get all that in order.
Okay, next slide.
Ardis, that's you.
I guess I'll say something about this. I have a kind of interesting issue. This, I think, is one of the most important elements of everything, because of the media saturation, how many press releases go to the media, and you want yours to stand out and get noticed. But even within our building, our high school does so many great things. It's kind of hard to make your voice heard above all the other wonderful things that are going on. So the more unusual or unique program could be, I think that's what I found to emphasize. Instead of just saying, hey, our kids are doing great things, we have to say, hey, our kids are doing great things, and nobody else is doing anything quite like this. And I think that really helps a lot. Tim, you have anything?
No, I think that that's, you know, something that's really important. I mean, you want to emphasize, you know, what your students are doing and how it's different and how it's unique and how it's benefiting the students in your school. And you know, those are things. If you look at the media, if you look at the news, whether or not we think it's right, the normal, ordinary, everyday stuff. Nobody has a news story about the normal, ordinary, everyday stuff that happens. It just doesn't work that way. So I'm at it from an angle of what's unique about what you're doing. Next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, you really want, you want to find out what does the community value, and it may be different. It may be, different for different news agencies. In particular, what are the kinds of stories that they're looking for? And that's something that, you can go ahead and gain some valuable insight if you will call your contact person at the news agency and just ask them to say, what kinds of stories are you guys looking for? Or if you have any particular features that are coming up, or, sometimes news media will have sort of a weekly kind of theme or a monthly sort of theme, and they're looking for stories that go along with that. And you can find that information out by, through conversation, through having a solid relationship with the contact people at the outlet. Ardis?
I had to learn this, and when I first learned this, I thought, well, that's kind of silly. Doesn't everyone value the same thing? But they certainly don't. In the community I work in, certainly they value money. And anytime someone does something that involves a lot of money, everybody notices. Now, just to do good work or even outstanding work, maybe they don't value that so much. It's expected. But it is something that does change community to community. I know one of the buzzwords that I found very effective right now is our district is into this 21st century learning stuff, and so if I can show any, for instance, implementation of technology or authentic learning where students are meeting with scientists or working with individuals in the community instead of just in the classroom, these things, they always pick up on. The news sources always pick up on them. And so, and I know this sounds really trite, but if you're in a district that has a competing high school, to go to your principal and say, hey, we got this really cool program here and the other high school doesn't have it. Don't you think we should put this out as a place of pride about how our high school is, better than theirs? I mean, even those kind of things, the community could be as small as the high school, or it could be as large as the entire city or town you live in. But you have to look at those kind of things because they do change place to place. Want to go on to the next one, Louisa?
Okay. So, Tim, I think that's you.
Is that me, artist? Okay, all right, I'll take this.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take it. All right, so invite reporters to interviews with your students. In other words, when you send a press release, make sure you make a note in the email or if you do happen to fax something, or if you have you want to follow up with a phone call. Make sure that the people at or your contact know that your students are available for interviews, that they can come on up, do a live radio broadcast, come on up and interview the students for whether it's the school newspaper or local or regional newspaper. Make sure that you specifically make that option available to them. Another thing that's really beneficial is consider inviting. We don't always think about this, but consider inviting your state or federal legislators. They love to come to schools, and especially if they know that the news is going to be there and they're going to get their picture taken. And the people in your state legislature, your state representatives, senators, or the federal level, the representatives and your state senators, sending invites to them to come to your school and check out what your students are doing. Phenomenal trump card.
Tim, I have a question. Does it? Would you recommend not just state or federal, but also like mayors or school boards if they're elected, really local elected officials? Does that work too?
Yeah. I mean, anytime that you get people who represent larger groups of the population, it's good to have them there. The reason why I kind of really focus on state and federal is that these are the folks, keep in mind, who hold the purse strings to your schools. Certainly school board members do as well. So I think that whether it's local, state, federal, just don't forget about these elected officials, because they can not only be a resource when you might need funding for project A or B, people that you can go to and say, look, we need a couple $1,000s to do this or that. Are there any grants available? They may be able to point you in that direction. So that's another valuable network to kind of build up. Now, the other artist, go ahead.
Louisa, did you break this slide into two? Is there another half of this next?
I didn't change it, but I can go on the next one.
Okay, that's probably where it is. So just following up on that then. Right, this is the same theme. So, in addition to the people that Tim mentioned, don't only invite them when you have something to celebrate, like an award or an activity, but I try to regularly invite people. Like Tim said, he has a goal of getting his students in the news once a month, and for me, that's way too lofty. I try to do it at least once a year somehow. But every time I'm doing something, I make sure that I invite all sorts of different community members, because I've learned that sometimes somebody who could get very excited for you and get in your corner might not be the person you expected. We always send out invitations to representatives for like our local educational foundations, some of our businesses that might somehow work with the schools or sponsor the schools, astronomy clubs in the area. These are amateurs who are very enthusiastic about the kinds of things that we do in astronomy research, and they can sometimes be members in the community or in extended communities that talk up your program and get the publicity out. Something that our principal got us onto is to invite realtors to events, because realtors have to sell homes in the district, and they need to be able to tell prospective buyers, hey, great things are happening in these schools. And here's an example. I was just at this school, and this what was going on. And sometimes those people have extended networks with other community organizations like Lions Clubs, etc. And Tim mentioned that sometimes you might want to go to them in the future and ask for funding or support for some event. And so looking out beyond the normal cycle of educational officials is really, really important, because you just don't know who's going to be a really key person for you.
Yeah, and that's really important. And something else, if you have people who give you money for various things for your project, absolutely invite them. Invite those key people to your classroom so that they can see what their contribution or how their contribution has benefited the students in your school. So next slide. Okay, so certainly publicizing your special program, of course, it's going to take time and energy that you don't have. Right? You may want to talk to, for example, the folks in your English department. Do they have a student that might be willing to go ahead and help you prepare press releases, especially if they have a strong language arts student that might be considering going into that for their career? Does the local school newspaper, do they have somebody that could come and work with you to help prepare press releases? This is a great experience for students, and it's also a great way for you to go ahead and get some assistance in actually putting together the press releases and getting them out there on a regular basis.
And I think the key thing here is that you've got to strike while the iron is hot, so to speak, because you might be looking at the calendar thinking, oh, my quarter grades are due next week and I'll get to it in 2 weeks from now, but sometimes that time-critical moment is very, very important. You want to go on to the next one then?
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so this is something I learned because I didn't think about the logistics of all of this, but there are certain days of the week that are terrible days to send press releases. And what I've learned is I never do it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday in my local area, because these are days when the papers are gearing up for their deadlines and nobody wants to deal with anything. And by the time they do want to deal with it, it's been buried by the next wave of things that have come in. So I found for me that Thursdays are the key day. They're the hot day. If I can get something pushed to people on a Thursday, it's most likely not going to get lost with all the many other things that are going on. And in addition to that, what I've found is that you have to look at the bigger calendar sometimes. And if you know, for instance, that it's homecoming this week, then maybe wait till next week to send in that press release, because there's a lot of other things that are going to crowd for media attention in a particular time. So you have to find when the right time is to be able to hit reporters or radio stations or whoever with that story. Tim, anything to add?
Nope, I think that's pretty much covered it. I think that, just one of your earlier comments about, striking while the iron is hot. You can't wait 2 months after something has happened and then try to do a news story on it. Typically, for example, if I was writing a press release for my students that went to the AAS meeting or something like that, I prepared that press release on my flight back from the AAS meeting, and it was into my news media contacts the first day I was back at school. In some cases, I did the press releases and I did them from the AAS meeting. And actually, that sort of approach really kind of led to my students being able to pull together a radio interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson, a live interview. So you definitely want to be striking while the iron's hot.
For the people who are actively participating in NITARP, we do try to at least prompt some media attention during the AAS. We've had uneven luck with that, but once you involve NASA or IPAC formally, then timescales for things get longer. So you can think of us as sort of a seed, I think. Certainly, we release our press release-like object during the AAS. And we distribute it to whoever you tell us to distribute it to. And if that's your school board or just you, that's fine. We'll distribute it wherever you want, but then you can pick it up and do your own thing with it. Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, this avoid faxing a story, like I said earlier, they get tons of faxes on a daily basis. And it just what you're trying to do is to rise above the static, and there's lots of static out there. So when you do have the press release, hand delivering it is great. Take it or have a parent take it, drop it off directly to the office. But something I just want to caution you about, if you hand it over to anybody other than your contact, other than your media contact, then always follow it up with a phone call. Or if the parent drops it off, always follow it up with a phone call and just say, just wanted to touch base with you and make sure you got that press release I sent, and just to see if you had any questions. And that's something that's very important. Ardis?
I agree with that. Something else, it's a little bit back to what we were talking about earlier regarding follow-up is I once ran into the situation where I was sending press releases to a black hole because a lot of times the school reporters are some of the newest people on staff and they change frequently. And so I always like to send out just some generic emails a couple times a year saying, hi, this is Ardis, just wondering, are you still covering things? I would like to know if any of your contact information has changed, etc. Because sometimes, we tend to rely so much on email and things like that we assume people are getting it. So that's a really important point that Tim makes is that if you don't hear back from them, you just need to give them a nudge to see if, in fact, there's still somebody on the other end. We can go on if you'd like.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ardis.
Okay, so in our local community, we have we have three local papers. We have two that cover our city, and then we have one that covers like a tri-county area. And none of these are the Detroit papers because unless you're killing somebody or doing something pretty dramatic, don't get in a Detroit paper for anything. But, the local people are really who you want to talk to anyway, most of the time. I've found that sometimes it's very effective where, I send a press release to everybody, and then neither one are kind of like moving too much, but you do get some kind of non-committal responses from them. And I've found that sometimes you can leverage one against the other, saying, hey, this other paper wants to set up an interview too, but, if you come by this Tuesday, you could get it in this week. And the other people said they might not be able to come till next week. And you can't play this game forever, but sometimes it just works out. And I have found that sometimes it motivates one group of people to come versus another because they think they can get the scoop on something.
And I think yep, I'm here. I think Ardis hit on all of the points.
Okay. Next slide.
Go ahead, Tim.
So, okay. Is it worth the effort? And I just have to say, absolutely yes. You're not only in bringing attention or in spreading the word about the great things that your students are doing or that you're doing. You then become a catalyst for change in your school, in your community, in the schools that surround your communities. I mean, when people look at the examples of the things that you are doing, I think it empowers other people to look at that and say, that's something that I can do too. And I think the effort that you put into getting the media informed about what you're doing is time very well spent. Ardis?
One thing I'd add to that is something that we sometimes don't always think about is that not only do we want to put in the effort to getting the word out to news sources, but as Tim just mentioned, to other educators, because certainly we can develop a synergy that way and a network of support. One of the teachers in our building likes to take students to teacher conferences and have the students speak to teachers as far as their perspective about why it was better or more meaningful to do certain programs than, let's say, the way that they had traditionally been in a class. And then other teachers start thinking about it, and you can start building some local support that way. And sometimes maybe it doesn't start within your district, but certainly will help gain the momentum overall.
Okay. Last slide there.
Okay, I wrote this because I don't know how many of you have a situation like this, but we have this newspaper called the Grosse Pointe News. And if you take their paper anywhere and get it photographed in a photo, you are almost guaranteed to get that photo published in the newspaper. So, I mean, we've just learned that sometimes to get something a little bit more likely to be noticed, we just take the Grosse Pointe News with us when we go places. And just make sure that one of the students is holding it in a group photo or in a photo that we stage. And it really works. So sometimes you just have to look at your local newspapers and see if they have some kind of gimmick that they like to use that is kind of a, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing.
Okay. Any parting thoughts from either one of you?
No, other than, this is not it's a difficult process to get started and to kind of get the momentum behind you and to do. But once you get going with it, once you have a system down, it is something that becomes much more natural and much easier to do. And so the important thing is to just get started. It builds up, I don't think we necessarily talked about this, but it builds up your program. It gets, the more students see themselves in the newspaper, getting recognized for the contributions that they're making and the work they're doing academically, the more likely it is that kids are going to come and take part in the programs that you sponsor. And so, just keep that. It's sort of a snowball. It kind of starts off and you put one press release out there and then it just all sort of snowballs. And you just want to keep that snowball rolling.
And just following up on what Tim just said, not only does it build your program in terms of your students and the students getting excited about hearing, let's say, that they're going to be in Mr. Spuck's class next year, but it also builds up your rapport within your building, your administration. They start to, your administrators start to know you, and then when you ask for the next strange thing or, in my case, I'm always asking them to install software on the computers they don't want to install and things like that. It's easier for me because they know that I have this history of doing great things with kids. And so, like Tim said, it does snowball. It snowballs not only within the community and within the students, but also within your building administration and how easily you can get things done. And then that eventually makes your job easier in the classroom. That's all my words of wisdom.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much. Are there any questions from the folks we have on the line or
I
discussion?
have a question. I'm in a really, really big school district. We have 19 high schools. And, yeah, while I was on the phone, I actually looked up. We also have these management directives we have to sign every year. And one of them is about media, and it flat out says all of our media has to go through the PR department at the school district. So is there anything you can suggest, like, that I put even just in, like, the subject area of the message? Because I really, I send the woman things all the time, and she doesn't always respond. So are there any, like, words that you think would get her attention more than other ones or anything like that?
I think that what I might do is it somebody that is it located where you can walk over and see the person directly and just?
Oh, I mean, it's downtown. I'm down there every once in a while, but I'm not anywhere near our district offices.
I guess I would suggest just making a follow-up phone call. Like after you help to prepare the press release or you have this idea and you call them and just say, would you like to do the press release? Or, I could put something together just as a draft, and if you could help me out with it, that would be great. Try to just pull them in and get them involved.
Okay.
I had kind of the same initial thought. For me, what's always worked best is to develop a personal relationship with the people that you have to talk to, whether it's in your district or in some news agency. And to me, the most important thing is that they know who you are and you know who they are on a personal basis, because it's harder for them to ignore you when that's the case. The second thing is, again, I go back to emphasizing why your program is different from everybody else's. Like, what is so special, awful cool, and unique about what you're doing? And if you can stand behind your claim that you're the only single person in your district doing it, I think that holds a lot of weight.
You would think, but I think they're sick of me at this point. Have you ever had that? Because I did a Google Plus hangout with the International Space Station, and we were one of only 2 schools in the country on the Google Plus hangout, and my district did not say a word to me after I emailed them like 4 times.
Yeah, sometimes I've run into something similar where at one point they said, well, we can't publicize your programs all the time. We have to publicize other people's too. But, okay, I'm fine with that. So publicize other people's too. But sometimes you get into the unfortunate situation where you might be one of the only newsmakers in your building. And that's difficult. It's just something, it's kind of a balancing act.
Okay.
I have something to say. I've got the principal that I had before always wanted me to funnel things through this guru at county level, and he said she was just wonderful, and I couldn't see she was all that great. But, county policy, all that kind of stuff. And the administration's changed, and the new principal came in, and he brought his secretary with him. And let me tell you, anything I give to her, she gets done. And this principal, I know he has a reputation for being hard to get along with. He has done nothing but support me. So, he has supported me like nobody in the last 10 years. So, just stick with it.
Okay.
The other thing, too, is sometimes you just have to work around people. In just hearing that story, it reminded me of a similar situation where I was at an impasse with somebody in our district. And what I did is I just picked up the phone and called a couple parents and said, hey, I'm really having a hard time getting the word out about this. And that's all I said. I didn't ask for them to do anything. But, sometimes, parents always get listened to, always.
Yeah.
So sometimes if your voice isn't getting heard, to find that one or two parents that will advocate for your program is all you need. Or not even for your program, just for their kids. Just have them talk up how great their kids are doing in your class and what a wonderful experience it is. And that way, it's not anything you did wrong. It's just how it happened. Parents were excited.
That's very diplomatic and very effective.
Okay, I put your emails back up on the screen so that people can reach you if they have further questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. And don't hesitate to contact me if you folks have any questions, or if you want to run a press release by Ardis or I am sure we'd be willing to give it a look.
Okay. Thanks a lot, you guys.